Want to deploy a WordPress website quickly without manually installing a web server, database, and PHP? In this video, I'll show you how to set up WordPress using Docker with MariaDB and phpMyAdmin, making your system easier to manage, back up, and scale. In this example, I'll be using Ubuntu running on Windows subsystem for Linux with Docker already installed. However, you can follow along on any operating system as long as Docker is installed. First, check the status of Docker to make sure the service is running properly before starting the deployment. If the status shows active, it means Docker is running normally and you can proceed with the next steps. In the previous video, I created a folder named Docker to keep all containers deployed with Docker in one place, making them easier to manage and monitor. For this website, I will organize the directory structure as shown in the diagram to make management clearer and more efficient. Inside the Docker folder, I create a sites directory to store websites, and each website will have its own folder, in this example, Site 1. Inside the website folder, I will store the env file for configuration variables and the Docker Compose YML file to define the containers that need to be deployed. This structure makes the system easier to manage, easier to back up, and more convenient when deploying additional websites in the future. Now, we will create the required directories and files based on the structure we just planned in order to prepare for the website deployment. After creating them, I will verify the directory structure and files to make sure everything has been created as planned. Next, open the env file so we can start adding the required configuration settings for the website. We will now add the required configuration values to the env file, including the database name, login credentials, database password, root password, and the access port for the website. Keeping these settings in the env file makes the configuration cleaner, easier to manage, and more convenient to update without modifying the Docker Compose file directly. After adding the configuration values, save the file and exit. Next, open the Docker Compose YAML file so we can begin defining the services required for the website. Next, we will define the two main services in the Docker Compose.yaml file, including the MariaDB database service and the WordPress service. Configuration values, such as the database name, user credentials, passwords, and access port, will be loaded directly from the env file created earlier, making the setup more flexible and easier to manage. In addition, volumes are defined to store the database data and WordPress files separately, ensuring that the data remains intact even if the containers are recreated or restarted. After completing the configuration, save the file and exit. Now, we will start the containers based on the configuration we just created to begin deploying the WordPress website. During the first startup, Docker will automatically download the required images and create the corresponding containers based on the configuration provided, so this process may take a few minutes depending on your network speed and system performance. Once the initialization process is complete, the required containers for the WordPress website have been created and started successfully. And we can now verify their status before accessing the website. Here, you can see that the WordPress and MariaDB containers have been created, but this view is not very intuitive. Instead, we will check them in Portainer to get a clearer view of the container status and running services. With Portainer, you can easily monitor the status of containers, view detailed information for each service, manage volumes and networks, and restore or stop containers directly from a user-friendly web interface. Now, access the WordPress website using the server IP address and the configured port to begin the initial setup process. Here, select the language you want to use for the website, then click Continue to proceed with the installation. Next, enter the required information, such as the site name, administrator username, password, and email address. Then click Install WordPress to complete the setup process. Now, log in using the administrator account and password you created in the previous step to access the WordPress admin dashboard. At this point, you have successfully completed the deployment and logged in to the WordPress admin dashboard. From here, you can start installing themes, adding plugins, and building content for your website. Next, to make database management easier, we will deploy phpMyAdmin, a web-based tool that allows you to access and manage the WordPress database more conveniently. First, stop the WordPress containers that were just deployed so we can update the configuration and add the phpMyAdmin service. Next, open the docker compose.yaml file again so we can add the phpMyAdmin service configuration to the current setup. After that, add this phpMyAdmin service configuration to the docker compose.yaml file. In this configuration, the last parameter is the root password of the database that was previously defined in the .env file, allowing phpMyAdmin to connect and authenticate with administrative privileges. Now, copy this configuration block and paste it into the docker compose.yaml file to add the phpMyAdmin service to the system. After that, save the changes and exit the configuration file. Now, restart the containers to apply the new configuration and deploy the phpMyAdmin service to the system. During this startup, Docker will download the phpMyAdmin image and create a new container based on the configuration we just added. Now, access the server IP address through port 8082 that we configured earlier to open the phpMyAdmin interface. Here, log in using root as the username and the root password that you previously defined in the .env file. At this point, you have successfully accessed the phpMyAdmin interface. From here, you can easily manage the WordPress database, inspect tables, and perform administrative tasks directly through the web interface. That completes the deployment of WordPress and phpMyAdmin using Docker. I hope you can set it up successfully. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe to support the channel and follow upcoming content. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.